We are so happy that you are here to join us because we start with some good news that folks have been waiting way too long for. You're looking at images now. These images have come out of Israel and Gaza after a ceasefire was announced. So we begin with major breaking news. Israel and Hamas have agreed to a deal that will pause fighting in Gaza. It's going to lead to a phased release of hostages and Palestinian prisoners. Again, as I said, this is cause for celebration. We'll get into the details in just a moment. But I want you just to ponder what's going on because it's been some 15 long months here. So thank you for joining live at 5 as we bring you this breaking news. Hundreds of Palestinian prisoners are set to be released from Israeli jails at the same time. This afternoon, President Joe Biden said that talks will go beyond the temporary ceasefire to phase 2 of the deal, and it's going to lead to a, quote, permanent end of the war. The war has killed more than 46,000 Palestinians, most of them civilians. That's according to health officials in the enclave. We have a lot to talk about today, this evening. We want to hear from you. We want to make sure that you're engaged and make sure that as many people as possible get to hear and be part of this conversation. So make sure you hit the thumbs up, make sure you hit the subscription button, and become a subscriber and a member. So I'm happy to be joined by someone who will he can help us get through this fast moving story with developments that are still coming in. That is Rula Jebreal, a journalist and a foreign policy expert. Rula, the last time we talked about this, there was contention. Remember, you were on with someone else, Israeli, and it was contentious. I want to play the president announcing this, and then I'm going to get your response. Here's the president of the United States, Joe Biden, just moments ago announcing this ceasefire deal. Here it is.
Good afternoon. It's a very good afternoon because at long last, I can announce a ceasefire and a hostage deal has been reached between Israel and Hamas. For more than 15 months of conflict that began with Hezbollah's brutal massacre on October the 7th, more than 15 months of terror for the hostages, their families, the Israeli people, more than 15 months of suffering by the innocent people of Gaza. Fighting in Gaza will stop, and soon the hostages will return home to their families. The elements of this deal were what I laid out in detail this past May, which was embraced by countries around the world and endorsed overwhelmingly by the UN Security Council.
So that is the president announcing earlier. Rula Jebreal, what do you have to say about that?
Well, we need to be clear about who really pushed for this deal, as much as I hate to say it, but we are in the business of telling the truth, right? This is a deal that if it wasn't for Donald Trump, this deal would have never happened. Let me repeat this. This deal, Hamas accepted 8 months ago. President Biden is right about in May, Hamas accepted the deal. The Prime Minister of Israel, as Israeli newspapers today write, and Israeli minister today brag about, would not accept the deal because he would lose his far-right coalition. He was threatened by 2 members of the coalition, Minister Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security, Smotrich, and others, and they told him, if you would accept any deal for ceasefire, we would basically, make the coalition collapse. There's 2 things happen. I was in Qatar recently. I talked to Arab diplomats, Egyptians and Qataris and others, and this is what they told me, that very often they told President Biden and this administration for months and months and months, all he needed to do is pressure the Prime Minister of Israel to accept the deal. He refused, simply because President Biden sees his legacy and wants his legacy to be as the most pro-Israeli president. He's ideological about it. He himself said he's a Zionist, and he would not do it. He continued to deliver weapons to Israel without any conditionality. He would not put any condition, including the use of certain weapons that the United Nations, the International Criminal Court, the the International Court of Justice said these weapons were used to kill civilians, and he would not do anything. But Donald Trump sent actually an envoy, and that is Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff went to talk to the Qataris, talk to the people who were talking to Hamas, understood the deal was already accepted, flew back to Israel, demanding a meeting with the Prime Minister of Israel. The people around the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, said, well, he cannot meet you today because it's Shabbat. We need to convey that Steve Witkoff actually happens to be a Jew. And he said, I don't care about that. We need to have these hostages freed. We need this deal. He imposed a meeting, and then Netanyahu accepted the deal. The part about the deal that will come out in the next weeks, and phase one, they will release the hostages on both sides. Netanyahu's ministers, as we speak now, say,
I'm gonna go into the detail about that, Rula.
Please.
So I'll go into the detail for moments. Okay, so there are a number of experts or what have you who are going to disagree with you, right? They're saying this happened on Biden's watch. Biden gets the credit. As a matter of fact, the press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, by the way, I'm going to put up, this is Donald Trump earlier, putting this out on his social media platform. This is a full screen. Let's put it up. Donald Trump saying earlier that we have a deal, that we have reached a deal when it comes. Let me get back to the right screen here. Can we put that up, Andy, from the president-elect?
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay. So Donald Trump saying that we have reached a deal. He is claiming credit. Joe Biden also claiming credit. I'm very aware of the fact that Rula is also saying that Donald Trump gets the credit from this. And as I said, folks are going to disagree on it. We'll get it up, Andy. If you can't, don't worry about it. I want to hear from Karine Jean-Pierre, please, if we can do it now. And then we'll put up Donald Trump in a second. Can you please play the Karine Jean-Pierre responding to this very question about who gets the credit in the briefing earlier today? Here it is.
You and the president have stressed that this is the framework that he put forward last spring. But the president also made clear it was important to him to work with the incoming administration, that they be speaking in as one team, as he put it. Even the Qatari prime minister in his remarks personally thanked Steve Witkoff, the incoming administration's Middle East envoy. So do Donald Trump and his team deserve any credit for this?
I mean, look, everyone is going to want some credit. Everybody's going to want some credit. Get that? That's how this goes when something good happens. Not unusual. It is not unusual at all. What I can say is the president got it done, right? That's what I can say. And what I could also say is that, and you said it in your question to me, is that there was a framework that was put forward. And it was put forward by the president back in May 31st of last year. And it was endorsed by the world. And you see a president that has done everything that he can. This is someone who has foreign policy experience, decades of foreign policy experience. He understands what it means to bring people together. He understands what it means to get a deal done. He also said in his remarks how difficult it was to negotiate. Negotiating is incredibly hard, and this wasn't easy, but we got it done. And so, this is someone who speaks from experience, and this is, again, not an easy thing to get done. But as we've said, and I've said multiple times, and I think Jake Sullivan said this obviously recently when he was here on Monday, we were able to work closely with the Trump transition team and coordinate with them. But again, this is a framework that the president put out, and negotiations aren't easy. And this was one of the toughest negotiations that he experienced. And this is something that the president shared with all of you.
And just
Okay, that's Karine Jean-Pierre earlier. And again, if we can put up the, I guess, would you call it a truth? I don't know. A tweet, a social media, his post. We have a deal, in all caps, by the way, Donald J. Trump, we have a deal for the hostages in the Middle East. They will be released shortly. Thank you, exclamation point. Okay, so you heard what she had to say. And look, I will tell you this. You probably know more of the behind the scenes details than I do, but they're going to say, hey, this happened on my watch, therefore I take credit for it. And it will probably go down in the history books as that, because it did happen on his watch, as Jimmy Carter was negotiating for the Iran hostages, but they did not get released until Ronald Reagan was in office. So Ronald Reagan took credit for it. So there you go. Okay, so what say you?
Well, this is what I say. According to diplomats who were involved firsthand in the negotiation, President Biden refused to put any pressure on Netanyahu. And ultimately, they gave up that any deal would happen. It was, and Don, you and I talked about President Trump. I have no love, and I don't want to give
I know
Trump
that.
any credits, but
I know
but I am in the business of telling the truth.
Same.
Donald Trump intervention have been monumental in making the ceasefire deal possible, and just to make people understand, President Biden not only refused on multiple occasions to put any pressure on the Prime Minister of Israel to do any deal. People who were involved in the negotiation, including Israeli negotiators, told me firsthand that very often they felt that he was more than backing the negotiating team, the Israeli negotiating team. He was backing the Prime Minister agenda and his desire to stay in office. The Israeli media and Israeli ministers, including Ben-Gvir, today confirmed that it was President Trump. Israeli media also confirmed that Netanyahu was already gave up on the hostages. He was willing to sacrifice the hostages for his political desire to stay in power. However, Donald Trump happened to be a transactional president, happened to be a transactional man. He wanted to come to the White House with a win. And that was always his approach.
Let me ask you this then. So why did they not wait until he took office, which is just going to be in about a week?
Because he didn't want to deal with these issues as he get into office. He wanted this issue to be off the table.
Rula. Okay. I don't agree with that. I think Donald Trump would like to have started off. We know Donald Trump, the day of his inauguration or on the day to announce a ceasefire. The fact that it happened on Biden's watch, I think that leads many people to question whether it was. And look, I'm not saying that you're wrong, but that's going to lead many people to question.
Do you know when the ceasefire will enter in? Do you know when the ceasefire will start?
It's going to start. Well, the temporary ceasefire is going to start. It should start on Sunday, correct?
It will start on the 19th.
You mean the permanent?
No. The phase one of the ceasefire will start the day Trump inauguration, basically. That's when it will happen.
Yeah, the inauguration. But that's what's going to cause some people, I'm saying, if you know Donald Trump, right? He would want this on the first day. The end of the war in Gaza and Israel, the end of the war in Russia. He would not, if it were left up to him, perhaps there were circumstances that he could not control, that he would say, you know what, I want this to happen not on Joe Biden's watch, not while he is still president. I want this to happen when I'm president. He's not president.
This is where the confusion is. It's not the end of the war. And this is the details. This is the part where Donald Trump obviously now takes credit for having pushed the ceasefire. But Donald Trump, and this is my understanding, Netanyahu got many gifts. One of those gifts, the most important one, that he can break the ceasefire anytime, that there is phase one, the exchange of the hostages. And after the exchange of the hostages, according to an Israeli minister, Smotrich, they don't want to implement phase two, meaning a permanent ceasefire withdrawal of the soldiers. So they want the exchange of the hostages. And if you read in Donald Trump tweet or whatever social media, he talked only about the hostages. Nobody's talking about the permanent ceasefire or end of the war. The war is not over. No, this is only a pause.
Right. And Biden talked about that in his address. So let's do the phases since you have been talking about it. Exactly. I was going to get to it. Okay. So if you'll just trust me, Rula, we've known each other for a long time. Trust me, I'm going to get there. Okay. So phase one. Okay. And it's 42 days, correct?
Yes.
42 days.
Yes.
Phase one. Israeli forces will withdraw to the east away from densely populated areas. Now, this is what Biden explained today as he was announcing this, which was his framework, correct? Populated areas and more aid will be allowed into Gaza, Qatari officials announced. The coordination is currently underway to open the Palestinian side of the Rafah border crossing to allow entry of international aid into Gaza. That's according to Egyptian security source. Israeli forces will stay on the border, and then 33 hostages being held in Gaza will be released, starting with women, children, and elderly, officials said. President Joe Biden said Americans will be part of the initial hostage release. 3 Americans are believed to be alive in Hamas custody, and 4 others are believed to be dead. Hundreds of Palestinian prisoners being held by Israel will also be released in exchange for hostages, Biden said. During phase 1, Palestinians can also return to their neighborhoods, and all the areas of Gaza, and the surge of humanitarian assistance into Gaza will begin, and the innocent people can have a greater access to these vital supplies, Biden said. The Israeli cabinet will convene on Thursday to approve the deal. They have not approved this deal, by the way.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's phase 1. Go ahead, talk to me, Rula.
Joe, an Arab diplomat from Egypt just texted me. He's been watching us, and he told me, please tell Don, I've been involved in the ceasefire negotiation deal between Hamas and Israel, and I want to give credit in these talks in part for the influence of President-elect Donald Trump. He repeats, this was the ever first time that there's been a real pressure on the Israeli side to accept any
Rula,
deal
I understand
in the
that
last
you said
15
that.
months.
Here, let me say this. I'm not saying that I doubt you. I'm talking about what people will say, and folks take credit, whether it is Biden's economy or Trump's economy.
Yes.
I'm just saying what folks will say. It happened on Biden's watch, and they will doubt some of what you are saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that I disagree with you. Okay, go on.
So this is what we know of the gifts that Netanyahu got, the phase that you read about exchange of the hostages. There's another side, obviously, as I said, Trump is transactionals. What did Netanyahu get in exchange? And this is where you can see that the deal is not really a perfect deal. It's a pause, and at least the mass slaughter and mass starvation of children will stop for a while. Smotrich, the minister in the Israeli government, is now saying we will resume bombing after those 30 days or 45 days after we get out of the hostage. So we don't know exactly what will happen, but we know one thing, that this is what Netanyahu got in return. They lifted all the sanctions, and this is when you understand that Trump got this deal. The lifting of the sanction will start on January 20th. The day Trump will be inaugurated, lifting on the sanctions on Jewish terrorists, anybody that committed any violence in the occupied West Bank, lifting on the sanction on ISO, which is the company that created Pegasus, the surveillance company that was involved in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. Second, the second thing that they will be getting, which a promise that Donald Trump made during the election campaign, in exchange of $100 million from Miriam Adelson, one of his donors. Israel will be allowed to annex illegally big chunks of Palestinian territories in the West Bank. Wow. They will be allowed to annex a huge chunk. I want to remind everybody that in July this year, the International Court of Justice deemed Israel occupation and colonization of the West Bank and East Jerusalem and Gaza as illegal, ordered Israel to withdraw from these territories, and order Israel to put end to its colonization. Donald Trump will allow Israel to continue to violate international law. And the most important element of this deal, and I think we need to be clear about it, Netanyahu wanted a deal, a side deal, or a bridge deal, whatever we want to call it, with Saudi Arabia. Normalization. In exchange for normalization, Donald Trump will be able to approve giving the Saudis nuclear technology. So the deal is far from perfect, Don.
Yeah, I agree with you. That is wow.
So if Biden wants to take credit for this deal, he should think about it twice.
Well, here's what I think is going to happen. Biden's going to take credit for the ceasefire. And then he's going to say, I worked with Donald Trump. See, I'm just telling you how people are going to think. I know this. Then he's going to say, we worked with the transition team, and this is their part that they should be taking credit for. So the person who's listening to us, right, that's what I'm trying to say to you. Folks are going to say, and I hear people in the chat now, and I hear the Biden supporters and all the folks saying, this happened during Biden, therefore Biden can take credit for the deal. Now, that is phase 1, and those are the parameters, as you say. So everything, Rula, has to go perfectly, right? It has to go as planned, or there may not be a ceasefire if it doesn't go as planned. There could be a hiccup because, as we said, the Israeli cabinet will convene on Thursday to approve the deal. They haven't approved it. Now let's talk about phase 2. 42 days, okay? Announcement of sustainable, calm, permanent cessation of military operations and all hostilities, as you said, to be implemented before the exchange of remaining Israeli male hostages, civilians, and soldiers for an agreed-upon number of prisoners in Israeli jails and the complete withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip. Details, details, details. This has to happen with precision, or again, we may not have a ceasefire. Am I correct with that?
You are spot on. Mark my word, and I'm happy to come back and talk about it. Phase 2 will not happen.
Really?
Phase 2 will not happen. As Israeli ministers now on television announcing, saying, we want the hostages back, we will accept, and phase 1, but phase 2, we're uncomfortable with it, even though they will have to vote and ratify it. So probably they will ratify part of it. I'm not sure they will ratify the whole of it. And why do I say this? Because we have a precedent. Israel signed a ceasefire deal with Lebanon 2 months ago, a month and a half ago. They violated 100 times, according to the United Nations, the ceasefire deal, because they had a clause inside the deal, which exists also in this clause, that Israel has the right to resume bombing Lebanon or Gaza whenever they wanted. And that is part of this deal as well, that Israel, if they feel that somebody is moving in the wrong direction with an object that might be suspicious, they have the right to bomb again and again. Not only in Lebanon, they violated the ceasefire 100 times. They bombed UN, basically stations. They bombed and injured UN personnel. Basically, you have soldiers who belong to the international community who are part of a mission called the UNIFIL mission, a peacekeeping mission. They were also bombed by Israelis in Lebanon. So do I believe that this Israeli government will respect all part and all phases of this deal? I do not.
Okay, phase 3. As I said, this has to happen with precision, or there may not be, folks may be celebrating a bit too soon. Phase 3, and let's hope that doesn't happen though. Phase 3, 42 days. The remains and bodies in possession of both parties will be exchanged after identification. The reconstruction of Gaza will start and last for 3 to 5 years, including homes, civilian buildings, and infrastructure, with compensation for all affected individuals under the supervision of several countries and organizations, including Egypt, Qatar, and the UN. Opening of the crossings and allowing the movement of people and goods. You think that's going to happen, Rula?
Never. No. And I'm telling you why, because Smotrich, again, the minister, who happened to be the finance minister, but a very powerful member of Netanyahu coalition, just said half an hour ago, he said, we will continue the pressure policy because we would like to force Palestinians to evacuate Gaza permanently. He talked about expulsion. He said, these countries invest and these are his words. Let me quote him directly. He said, these countries, instead of investing in Gaza and restriction, they should take these Palestinians out of Gaza. We want Palestinians out of Gaza. This is the reality. So in the end, Donald Trump will claim some kind of achievement in initial ceasefire. He will get the 30 hostages if they're alive. We don't know how many of them are alive out. But that was this will be the biggest achievement, and the achievement will end there. I believe that you believe that Donald Trump is very transactional, but also he got a lot of money from Miriam Adelson. We know exactly what these donors wanted from day one. They wanted annexation of the West Bank for Israel, but also they believe in Netanyahu's own agenda, which is thinning the population in Gaza. They might push the population in Gaza to basically force them to immigrate towards Egypt and towards other countries.
Okay, Rula, thank you. I appreciate you joining us. And we'll have you back, and we'll see if this happens. Let's hope it does happen.
I hope so.
Maybe they can negotiate better parts of the deal if there's some negotiation. But remember, the Israelis have not voted on this yet. They're
exactly
going on Thursday. Rula Jebreal, international journalist. Rula, I've got to get to our other guest who comes on.
Thank you so much, Don.
If you want to say something quickly before we get
I just wanted to say that in the Middle East, Biden legacy sadly is written in Palestinian children's blood. Thank you.
Thank you, Rula. I appreciate that. Okay, so there's other news. And again, Rula is giving her sources and her opinions on this. So we'll see if it plays out that way. But we do know that the current president of the United States is taking credit for it. He said it happens on his watch. This is his framework. She is saying, according to her sources, she believes that this deal, Donald Trump deserves credit for this deal. She doesn't believe it's a perfect deal. She hates to give him credit for it, but that is what Rula is saying. So, and of course, we had a great deal of other news today, including, and we want to know what you say. What you have to say, because you know this is a show where you talk live at 5. We're going to put your comments up. I want to hear so much what you guys have to say, because I know you're feeling a certain kind of way of what Rula is saying. So we had other news today, including contentious confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill. So joining me now, Will Saletan, another one of our good friends over at the Bulwark. Will, appreciate you joining us. How you doing today?
Awesome. How you doing, Don?
How much news can we have today? Or it's like been a fire hose of news recently. So, Will, we appreciate it. You wrote something in the Bulwark that I thought was fantastic. You talked about the confirmation hearings. You specifically talked about Pete Hegseth. He wants to wage war against the left. I want to get into that. Why do you said Hegseth does seem to be interested, this is a quote, in waging war, but it's not a war against foreign enemies. It's a war against Trump's domestic opponents. Hegseth has been obsessed for years with defeating American liberals. In 2020, speaking at a conservative political action conference, he used the words war, battle, and fight 7 times in 8 minutes. Not once did he direct those words toward a foreign adversary. Instead, he applied them to the left. First, we're going to talk about Pete Hegseth, and then we'll talk about Pam Bondi and others. Why do you write this?
Well, Pete Hegseth has a long history as a pugilist, someone who's engaged in partisan warfare within the United States. And he's described it in somewhat apocalyptic terms. So I was quoting there from a speech he gave to CPAC a few years ago, the last time he spoke there. And, you know, people think of Pete Hegseth now because he's a veteran and he's been nominated for a military job to run DOD. They think of him in that context. But his career has been, you know, much broader than that. And his general pattern is the left is evil and we need to fight it. We used to call it a crusade. He spoke about a crusade, a war, a battle, a crusade to save America from not China, not Russia, but from the left, from liberals. And so he brought that attitude into his confirmation, and he's trying to erase some of that now for political reasons, but it is who he is. And that is what Democrats fear.
Okay, let's get some. I want to hear. Do you watch the hearings? I'm sure all of them yesterday, right? Or the hearing. I haven't seen anything like that in a long time. It was very contentious, and perhaps the most contentious, I believe, it was what Hegseth and Tim Kaine. I want to play Tim Kaine talking about anonymous, or not Tim Kaine, but Hegseth talking about anonymous smears, and then we'll get back to what you were talking about. Here it is, or what you've written about. Here it is.
Do you have non-disclosure agreements with either of those organizations?
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Many of your work colleagues have said that you show up for work under the influence of alcohol or drunk. I know you've denied that, but you would agree with me, right, that if that was the case, that would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense.
Senator, those are all anonymous false claims, and the totality
they're not anonymous.
The letters on the record here.
They're not anonymous.
On the record, people
we've seen records with names
Vets
attached
for Freedom,
to them.
Concerned Vets for America, and Fox News attributing to me working hard every day on behalf.
One of your colleagues said that you got drunk at an event at a bar and chanted, "Kill all Muslims." Another colleague, not anonymous, we have this, said that you took co-workers to a strip club. You were drunk, you tried to dance with strippers, you had to be held off the stage, and one of your employees in that event filed a sexual harassment charge as a result of it. Now, I know you denied these things, but isn't that the kind of behavior that, if true, would be disqualifying for somebody to be Secretary of Defense?
What do you think of that?
Well, yeah, so Hegseth went through several interrogations from different senators about this, and Kaine was particularly confrontational about it. But, I mean, Hegseth's problem there is he has an alcohol problem historically. He has a problem with the way he treats women. His own mother famously wrote an email, which we have a copy of now, talking about his abuse of women. He's now trying to sort of paper over that. But he has this sort of character problem, which in the Trump era doesn't count the same way. You know, Don, you remember in the old days, used to be that if you had these kinds of character problems, it would really hurt you in a confirmation. But in the Trump era, the guy who's appointed you has so many of these problems that Republicans are just sort of locked down. So it's only the Democrats that you hear these concerns from.
Yeah.
But the larger concern about Pete Hegseth in terms of the character stuff is not just that he's going to get drunk on the job or that he's in denial about his problem. It's that he's not a good manager. His whole history is, not having it together and not ever running anything well. The organizations that he has run have ended up in the red. And they're appointing him to the biggest management job in the government, right? The Pentagon. You're having to deal with defense contractors. He has no experience with that. He's going to go in there, and he's presenting himself as a reformer, and Trump's message is Pete Hegseth is a reformer. But Don, they're going to eat his lunch. The defense contractors, the generals, the bureaucrats, because he doesn't know what he's doing, he's going to be ineffectual. That's sort of the larger picture.
Interesting. Look, this is from overall, also on the Bulwark. JVL, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Be last. This is what he wrote. He said, Vice is in his article, Vice is a moat, right? Democrats believe that bringing up Hegseth's many personal and moral failings would help his confirmation prospects, because Republican senators would then feel as though they had to confirm him, because Republican voters would rally around him in solidarity because of his vices. In the Trumpified world, it's a small print here, world of Republican politics, vice has become a moat, right? If a figure is a bad enough person, it inspires fanatical loyalty in Republican voters and helps protect them from challenges. I just want to play this. This is, and I thought that when I saw this happening yesterday, Will, I thought that this was dangerous territory, and I was actually surprised that Tim Kaine went here, but he did. Folks on the left seem to love it, but I'm wondering if it's going to help or hurt him in these confirmation processes. This is Tim Kaine questioning him about his marital affairs. Here it is.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves. You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
In finalizing divorces.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. He just plays the Jesus card.
That was very frustrating for me, especially, look, well, I am a believer. I'm a Christian.
Yes.
It's like, we don't live in a theocracy, though. You know what I mean? So why? Right. How does that make you qualified?
I am also surprised that Tim Kaine went there. Look, redemption is a serious thing. Faith is a serious thing. I know people who have turned their lives around. Pete Hegseth's problem, among other things, is this. We all know that the Jesus and redemption have also been invoked insincerely. And so you're trying to figure out, which is it? Is the guy for real or not? And there's, the thing is, Pete Hegseth is not on his second marriage. He's on his third marriage. There was an interim period where he sort of lost his way. He took up with somebody at his workplace at one of the veterans organizations, divorced that wife, had a whole second life. So there's a redemption phase. And then he does it again. He goes to Fox News. He takes up with someone there, divorces his second wife. He's on his third wife now. And I would love to believe that he has turned his life around, but this is not the first time that he has pretended to do that. And so I think there's a legitimate concern that he's just in denial.
Do you think that this was a more appropriate? You said you were surprised that Tim Kaine went there. His questioning, or Senator Slotkin's questioning on deploying troops against Americans, perhaps this was a more appropriate line of questioning. And I want to know if you think it's effective. Here's that moment.
Abdicated and ignored for the last 4 years.
That wasn't my question. I'm just asking, have you been involved? You're about to be the Secretary of Defense, potentially. Have you been involved in discussions about using the active duty military inside the United States?
Senator, I am not yet the Secretary of Defense.
Right.
If confirmed, I would be party to any number of
conversations. But you haven't been in any of these conversations.
Which I would not reveal what I have discussed with the President of the United States.
No, just have you been in conversations? You're going to be in charge of 3 million people, the active duty that I know you care about. I believe you care about. So have you been in conversations about using the active duty in any way whether it's setting up in detention camps, policing dangerous cities. Have you been involved in any of those conversations?
Certainly, I have been involved in conversations relating to doing things this administration has not, which is secure the southern border and not allow floods of illegals to enter our country through an invasion.
Okay.
That whole thing, anyways, the whole border thing or whatever. I'm like, what does that have to do with any of it? But this is more about the America's enemy from within, right? Yeah.
Right. Well, he's pivoting to the border stuff, which is probably one of his cue cards. The larger context here, and this also is going to touch on Pam Bondi, and Don's going to touch on all the confirmations, is Americans have already done the bad part here, which is that they reelected Donald Trump. And the Democrats know that Donald Trump is the least trustworthy, most dangerous character of all these people. Nobody he's nominated is worse than him. And so the question to these nominees, and this was to Hegseth in the context of use of military against domestic Americans, is, are you going to say no? Are you willing to say no to the guy who's nominating you? And because the Republican Party has become such a cult, there's a legitimate concern that none of these people are going to say no. And Don, remember, the people who said no are gone. They're gone because they said no. Mike Pence, gone because he said no. J.D. Vance put in his place. Think about the previous defense secretaries. Think of the previous attorneys general who didn't do what Trump wanted. And so Pete Hegseth is there because he's the guy who will say yes to Trump. So Slatkin is very right to ask that question. The problem is she's not going to get an honest answer in a confirmation hearing. He's going to say what the boss says.
Yeah, well, same thing that happened today. But one more before we go to Pam Bondi. What happened today? One more that I want to play for Pete Hegseth, which I thought was important. Really is well, are you qualified for the job? Right? That's really the main thing. Are you qualified? Your character says a lot about your qualifications, but your actual resume. It's great, I believe, that he served his country with honor, but that does not mean that you should be the head of the Defense Department. You should be the defense secretary. That doesn't make you qualified to be the defense secretary. Senator Tammy Duckworth, who served honorably and really suffered tremendous losses of limb from fighting herself, had this question really just about qualifications and do you know what you're doing and what you're talking about, and are you up for this job, because it's a pretty big one. Here it is.
Do that, you could do acquisition and cross-servicing agreements, which essentially are security agreements. You can't even mention that. You've done none of those. You talked about the Indo-Pacific a little bit, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. Can you name the importance of at least one of the nations in the ASEAN, and what type of agreement we have with at least one of those nations? And how many nations are in ASEAN, by the way?
I couldn't tell you the exact amount of nations in that, but I know we have allies in South Korea and Japan and in AUKUS with Australia, trying to work on submarines with them.
Mr. Hegseth, none of those countries are in ASEAN.
Across.
None of those 3 countries that you've mentioned are in ASEAN. I suggest you do a little homework before you prepare for these types of negotiations. Listen.
So, look, I think that was effective for 2 reasons. Number one, qualifications. She got him on the facts. Also, she's a combat veteran from Iraq. She served in the U.S. Army helicopter pilot as a U.S. Army helicopter pilot. In 2004, her Black Hawk helicopter was hit by a rocket-propelled grenade fired by Iraqi insurgents. She lost both of her legs and some mobility in her right arm. And she was the first female double amputee from the war. This is personal for her, and I believe that this may be perhaps the most effective questioning of the hearing, yes or no, and will this make a difference?
Well, I don't think any of this is ultimately going to make a difference because Hegseth believes he's got a lock on it, and the evidence for that is he didn't even meet with the Democratic senators. All throughout this hearing, every Democratic senator said, my office has been trying to get a meeting with you. We couldn't get it. Hegseth people would give it to them on January 20th, after he's confirmed. So they feel like they don't need the Democratic votes. So I don't think any of it made a difference in terms of the confirmation, but she's right to ask about that. And the reason is he doesn't know that part of the job. Trump's whole conceit in appointing Hegseth is a common man. He's just a guy who's fought. And so we don't want another general in there. We want somebody who's actually been on the battlefield. Well, a lot of generals work their way up often. But the point is, Trump's whole shtick is to turn everything upside down. Expertise is bad in the Trump administration, right? We don't want those experts. They got everything wrong. We're going to bring in outsiders. We're going to bring in people who don't have experience. And the pretense is that this is going to work somehow. They're going to clean things up. I think the reality is what Tammy Duckworth exposed there. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's going to take him a long time to learn it. Meanwhile, other people are in effect going to be running the Defense Department.
I want to play, well, let's talk about Pam Bondi now. As you know, when folks are in these hearings, whether it's for this, to be appointees or to be members of the Supreme Court, they will say one thing at these hearings and they'll do another in real life. You know what I mean? Or when they actually get the job. Hey, do you Roe versus Wade? It's the law of the land. I'm not going to do anything to change it. And they send it back to the states and they change it. They get rid of Roe v. Wade. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So just Pam Bondi, I believe, is doing that in this moment. First, I want to play what she said. This was back in 2020 as she is talking about fake ballot conspiracies. This is her on Fox News. They do check her a bit. And then I'll play what she said today. Here it is. First, Fox News.
The good residents who are all supporting us in Pennsylvania, their votes don't count by these fake ballots that are coming in late.
What,
and back
Pam?
to the observation, they're not letting us watch the process.
Pam, did you just say fake ballots?
There could be. That's the problem. If they're letting,
Do
we
you have
don't
any,
know, Steve.
Do you have you heard stories of, ballots that are fake? And if so, just tell us what you know.
Well, we know that ballots have been dumped. There were ballots that were found early on. We've heard that people were receiving ballots that were dead. The thing that's happening all over the country.
Were they legal ballots?
Well, no, not if people were receiving ballots where they were deceased. That's the problem. And that's why the supervisor of elections cannot extend. She wants to keep extending this process. And these two lawsuits go hand in hand. All we want to do is observe what's happening.
Pam?
Right now, within that convention center, I heard this late last night. We were with all the people on the ground at 10 o'clock last night. They told us now they've even put up huge trash cans. If something's not wrong, why won't they let us observe?
Did anyone who was counting, did they say they saw a postmark of November 4th or 5th?
We talked about that last night, and there are good people working in that room. We don't want them to lose their jobs for coming forward and talking to us. So that we don't.
Oh my gosh. Okay. You get it, right? You got it.
Totally.
It just like, it gives me a headache to listen to. Okay, well, let's play today. Here it is. The two faces of Pam.
It's central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was a peaceful transition of power. President Trump left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
Do you have any doubts that Joe Biden had the majority of votes, electoral votes necessary to be elected president in 2020?
Senator, all I can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course.
Okay.
Will the real Pam Bondi please stand up?
Give me a minute to dig into this.
I am. Go.
Okay. First of all, remember, you just heard before a clip of Pete Hegseth at his hearing yesterday complaining about anonymous allegations. We don't like Republicans we're not going to listen to any of these anonymous allegations. They're anonymous. We're not listening. And then you heard the clip of Pam Bondi after the 2020 election saying, we've heard stuff about fake ballots and ballots being stuff. Oh, well, can you tell us who says this or whether? Oh, we don't want to get these people in trouble. We don't want to give you any names because the people who are telling us this. So they are happy to use these anonymous allegations, which, by the way, Don, none of it checked out, right? In 2020. My picture of Pam Bondi, because I went back and researched her record after the 2020 election, thinking she had done worse than she actually did. What actually happened after the 2020 election, Pam Bondi was one of the people. She wasn't one of the crazy people who went on for weeks and weeks that it was a fraudulent election. The couple of days after the election, she goes to Pennsylvania. She's there with Don Jr. and Corey Lewandowski, or with Eric, and they're talking about how we're going to count all these ballots in Pennsylvania, and then she stopped. She just disappeared. So Don, I thought, well, Pam Bondi just drew a line and said, hey, this is not checking out. I'm off. I'm not going to besmirch myself by, talking about stuff that I can't substantiate. But then I see the hearing today. I see exactly what you just showed. She's asked, did he win the election? And she talks there. She also talks in that answer about what happened in Pennsylvania. So she's going back to the Pennsylvania stuff, back to the idea of fraud. And as you see, she won't answer, did Trump lose? And Don, you heard her. That's a rehearsed answer, what she said. Yes. She knows she's going to get that question. And so she and her people have decided they cannot say Trump lost. They cannot say Trump and lost in the same sentence. So they can say Biden is the president. They can't even say Biden, won. They'll say Biden, So there is this bizarre cult around Trump where you are not allowed to speak this basic truth about 2020, that he lost. Even when he just won an election, they can't say the part about him having lost. And that pathology is going to be a major problem it's going to be a major problem because Trump is going to be president and no one around him can acknowledge that he loses anything.
Does she defy Trump in any way if he says to do something, or is she just going to carry his water, do you believe, if she becomes the attorney general?
No one knows. And that's one of the problems with the confirmation hearings is all these Democratic senators were asking exactly your question, because they know that Trump is very dangerous. Trump's already proved it. He attempted a coup. So they want to know, are you the person he just appointed to this important job? Attorney General is the most important because that's the person that he would send to investigate and allege voter fraud, right? What did Trump do right after 2020? He went to the Justice Department, right? He wanted the people who run the Justice Department to spread a lie about voter fraud. So presumably he would go to Pam Bondi for that. Will she say no? And the Democrat, no matter what she says in this moment, no one can trust her. And she wouldn't say, I will say no to Trump. She kept in every answer denying the premise. He won't ask me, even though we all know he already did. He already did that in 2020.
Yeah, very studied. Are you going to, if whatever he does with the January 6th, right? Are you going to allow him to pardon those folks? She wouldn't answer. I'm going to
right.
She doesn't answer any of it. Interesting. So look, I want to ask you something because I know that you don't want to talk about this, but you can talk about sort of, who gets the credit here. I want to play the Joe Biden, that I wanted to save this for Will because I think that this is a part that he can talk about. And Will, I know that you don't want to comment specifically on the details of what happened with this ceasefire. But what do you think of this? Because Donald Trump is putting out a tweet saying, we have a deal. Thank you very much. Basically, I got the deal done. And then Biden was asked about that at the announcement. I want to just get what you think about this. Here it is.
Books credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
That is a Bidenism, but who gets the credit? I believe it's on his watch. He's going to take credit for it, but folks are saying, oh, it was Trump or whatever, but it is on his watch.
Right. No, Donald Trump gets no credit at all for this. He didn't do anything. But the whole thing is, as we all, Donald Trump takes credit for everything. So Donald Trump claiming credit for something, as he's doing for this and will do for Don, remember, every time the stock market went up in the last 6 months, Donald Trump said it was because of him, even though he wasn't president. It's because I'm going to be president. He literally nominated his Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, because that's the guy who would go around with Trump and claim that Trump was causing the stock market to go up. And then every time the stock market went down, Donald Trump said, oh, that's Joe Biden. So it's almost a joke that Trump claims credit for everything good and attributes blame for everything bad, right? So the fact that Trump is claiming credit is meaningless. It's meaningless because he does it all the time. In this case, the evidence is, it's Biden's people who were working on this. Trump's going to claim because I was coming in the threat of it. Remember, Trump's also claiming, he also said he was going to solve Ukraine, right? Mm-hmm. And that did not go the way he said. He's obviously not going to have that settled before he goes in. He's now saying he needs 100 days. So he just lies. He's got a long history of lying about he's going to solve this or that problem. This one's going to get solved, not because of Trump, but because of the people who've been working this issue for the last year. And that's the Biden administration.
Will Saletan, you guys over at the Bulwark, we love you guys. Any parting thoughts before I let you go, sir, about all the madness that's going on?
The madness is going to go on for the next 4 years at least. I implore everybody, keep your head screwed on. It's going to be really hard. You're just going to hear a lot of lies. You're going to see a lot of bizarre stuff, people being nominated for cabinet jobs and put in cabinet jobs who manifestly shouldn't be there. It's going to be real hard. Everybody take a deep breath, get, good sleep, exercise, eat well, because it's going to be hard for the next several years.
Are you going to the inauguration, or are you going to cover?
No, I'm gonna stay away from the inauguration. There's not much suspense in the inauguration because the Democrats are out of power. We know that the president is going to be allowed to take office.
Yeah. Well, Saletan, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, man.
My friend.
Take care, Don.
All right, so guys, thank you for listening to both of those guests. And I knew I was saving at the end. I knew that some of you guys were upset and saying, "Hey, look, why is she saying that Trump should take advantage? She has an axe to grind," or whatever. Look, she is, on the Palestinian side in all of this. Rula does have some good contacts, but the fact of the matter is that it did happen on Joe Biden's watch. He will take credit for it. Now, the details, the devil is in the details, as they say, and what happened behind the scenes and all of that. You heard Karine Jean-Pierre saying, "Hey, look, a lot of people want to take credit for this." I will just say that it was Joe Biden's framework and that we worked with the Trump transition team, but Joe Biden takes the credit here. I want to know what you guys have to think, because I know you feel a certain kind of way about this. I've been waiting to answer your questions and get your comments. So are you guys ready? Let's go. By the way, we have so many people, so great engagement today. And what's up? Did you guys forget about the thumbs up? Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you're following us on or watching us, whether it is on YouTube, where we are now, whether it's on TikTok, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook, whatever. Make sure you follow us and you like and subscribe. It affects the algorithm. And it's important to us because more people get to hear and see our conversation. If you do those things, please. The membership link, by the way, is at the top of the chat. If you become a member, you get all kinds of things that are specific to memberships, exclusive things that we will tell you about soon. And it will tell you if you go and you hit the link. Okay. Beth Collier says, "Oh, we have been writing what we think. It has been brutal." Okay. I want to hear it again, Beth Collier and everybody else. Linda Ferker says, "We are ready for this." All right. So you guys, I don't think that she was completely wrong. President Biden at times is too patient and found out he has few friends in Washington, says GQ Wonder Woman. What do you say to that? Do you agree with that? Also, Don, don't cover the Melon Felons inaugural. Okay, that's something different. Rula, I don't agree with, says Sheila Vining. Why don't you agree with Rula, Sheila Vining? Tell me about that. Why don't you agree? Biden got it done, says Andrea Pinkney. Biden got it done. It did happen on his watch. As I said, the devil is in the detail. I'm not saying that I disagree or I'm discounting Rula, but everyone has a reason for how they feel about certain things. Rula has better contacts in the region than I do. So this belongs to Biden, says Lisa Parker. When it goes poorly, Biden team will not want credit. My 21-year-old and his Palestinian friends are not pleased, says Dee Thompson. Tell me why that is. Are not pleased with what? Let me know. What is behind me on the screen? Those are folks that are celebrating in the streets of Gaza right now that I have been monitoring behind me. She was trying to gaslight us. Please don't have her back, says Chandra Maurice. Okay. Biden gets the W, says Amanda Belcher. Biden gets the W, says Amanda Belcher. Okay. Not pleased with what, says Tawana Manson. That's what I want to know. Pia Payne Shannon says Trump didn't have anything to do with it because he can't negotiate his way out of a bag. Camilla Radina says she was gaslighting. The Truth Reality LLC, a Realty LLC, says Rula started out like Trump really helped get it done, but by the end, it's not a deal because it wasn't approved. I'm confused. Well, that is the thing. Thank you very much. It's a very important point. Before I leave Maureen's up there and wait, hold on a second. So I want to get to the Truth Realty LLC. It is true. So the Israeli part of this deal has to sign off on Thursday. So is it completely done? No. Would they do this if they hadn't been some at least tacit agreement or some initial agreement? They would not have done this whole dog and pony show. No, they would not have come out. Perhaps they felt pressure. Maybe Trump was going to take credit for it, and the Biden folks said, we're going to go, and because he's going to do it, and we're not going to let him on the narrative. I don't know exactly what it is, but it has to be voted on by the Israeli side on Thursday, which is tomorrow. Today is Wednesday, so we shall see. Okay, the negotiation started way before the U.S. election, says Claudette R. Maureen Marfell says, I really do not like that Rula, and stand by 1 second so I can get it up here. 1 second, because it flashed off on my screen. I really don't like that Rula said at the end about Biden is responsible for the children and bloodbath. That is brutal. That also, I believe, indicates some would say is possible bias here. And because some may think that they didn't like the way that he acted, that he is responsible here. And so now going out the door, let's say it's Donald Trump's win. So I don't know. Listen, Rula is an expert. She knows. So an international journalist here. So that's what I have to say about that. Was that a necessary parting shot? No. Is that going to be Biden's legacy? That's what she says. I don't believe that. I don't believe that will be Biden's legacy, considering all the accomplishments that he has had in the many years that he has been in public service. Patsy B. Mo 2024 says, it is about the ending of human beings being killed by war, right? Is it about the endings of human beings being killed by war? Or is it the most important thing today is who gets the credit? Well, that is the reason that we say that is because of the messaging that folks are putting out. Did you see the last question that was asked of Biden as he left the podium? Who gets the credit? Because Trump is trying to take the credit. As you heard, Will Saletan says Trump will try to take credit for everything. Bonica Stubbs, Trump and Netanyahu are two of a kind and neither can be trusted. Okay? That is her opinion. That's your opinion there. Let's see who else has something to say about this. Nanapan says Biden and Trump are not the president of Israel. All the U.S. can do is mediate. That is true, and they can negotiate. Anthony Blinken worked tirelessly day and night for many months, says Beth Collier. And Beth, you are saying exactly what the president said today, and also what Karine Jean-Pierre said from the podium in the briefing room, that this is the result of folks who have been working for months to try to get a framework and to try to get this done. Okay. Thank you, whoever said that. I'm not sure what that was. Legally competent parties. I'm not sure what that means. If the deal falls through, will Trump still take ownership, says Tanya. That is true. Tanja. Same deal from May. Biden, says Paulette Oliver. So look, I think that most of the folks in the chat believe that it was Donald Trump's. Again, the devil is in the detail. All of them will try to take credit for it. And there you have it. There's so much news. Wow, look at the engagement. You guys with a thumbs up. What's going on? Members, are you listening to me? We have twice the number of people who are watching than the number of thumbs up or likes that we have. There's a lot going on in the world. I'm so glad that we get to have these conversations together. It's been an extremely busy day for me. It started off with the hearings and listening to Pam Bondi and listening to Marco Rubio, and then speaking at the National Press Association here in Washington, D.C. is what I did today. It's been a tough day. But here's what I'm happy about. I'm not happy about the nominees that are not normal here and about the folks who would not answer general basic questions during the hearing. I'm glad, I hope that this deal sticks and perhaps they can negotiate an even better deal for all sides. But that innocent people, those lives it will stop the loss of lives from those innocent children and folks who are dying in Gaza. And I hope this is at least the beginning of a pathway forward to a better situation in that region. A lot of folks are not really positive about that. are not optimistic about it because of the history. I prefer to be optimistic in this moment, so let's hope that happens. So we're praying for the folks over there. We're praying for the folks in the fire in Los Angeles, and everyone. Hegseth is a joke, and Bondi is a cute blonde for his team, says Jennifer Hollis. Okay. Don, who do you feel will be confirmed, says Kev. I think they will all be confirmed. I think he'll get all of them confirmed. Now, because of some of the questioning yesterday, that was a very good question. Because of some of the questions yesterday, especially with Tim Kaine's questioning, when I went back and looked at it, it sounded like a setup to me for some information that they possibly have that will be a kind of October surprise. When at the end of all of this, as he was setting up his questions and saying, now, if someone, this would disqualify someone if this happened, or this would disqualify someone if that happened, it sounded to me like, Tim Kaine, do you have something there that you're not telling us? Do you have something there that you're not telling us? Belinda G, thank you for your support of independent media. Praying for California, says Grateful 1509. I appreciate that. Don, how was your press conference and what took place? It's not a press conference. I spoke with the, what is it? The International Press Club here. Forget the exact name of it. Okay, but that's what I spoke to. And it was great. We talked about independent media, the importance of why folks are so enamored by the National Press Club here, why folks are so enamored by independent media now, why they're so turned off in the trust in legacy media or the mainstream media, as they say. Well, how is that? Why is there such a huge mistrust of legacy media? So it went very well. People were open to it. A lot of folks are lemon heads. The folks watch. Some folks said, hey, man, I didn't know on CNN, you know, you didn't do it. But, you know, I heard you cursing. And I was like, wow, Don Lemon does. And I was actually, it heartened me because you're a real person. I am. I said, I didn't think that was a big deal. So I'm going to make sure that I don't curse as much because it's kind of shocking to people. But, you know, hey, I got to do me. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you joining us. The membership tab is at the top of the chat. We would love for you to become part of the Lemon Nation and become a member, and make sure you subscribe. Subscriptions are free. We're almost at 350,000 subscribers in less than a year. Come on, guys. Yes, that is a cause for celebration. So make sure if you know someone, send them our subscription button. Make them go and subscribe. We're almost there. By the end of the night, maybe just within a few hours, I would love for us to get to 350,000. That would make the day a much better day, considering what's going on in the world, if we can do that. That means our small but mighty team and initiative will be becoming a bigger team and bigger initiative. We're not that far off. We are not that far off. So I know that you guys can do it. I know that you guys can do it. And so I would appreciate it if you encouraged others as well. So thank you for your support of independent media. I've got to go to something else. This is a very busy day for me. I have another call and something else that I have to get to, another event. So have a fantastic evening. 10 a.m. Eastern time. I'll see you for our hot topics. Let's see what happens in the world between now and then. Thank you, Nancy Levine. I appreciate you becoming a member. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never, ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.